All right, welcome in, guys. Farzin Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Chief Zone podcast. And training camp is officially underway. The Chiefs have started training camp and all of that now fully in full swing. Even though the veterans are not there yet, the Chiefs one step closer to starting the 2024 season and are looking to three-peat, all of that good stuff. Veterans will be there later this week. Let's get into it. I'm Farzin Vasugian. Appreciate you guys downloading and listening to this episode of the Chief Zone podcast. For those of you who are watching live on Facebook and on YouTube, big thanks to all of you guys. Regardless how you're downloading and listening to the podcast, all of you guys live or archived, appreciate all of you guys. If you guys can do me a favor, please make sure you guys are sharing the links, clicking like on them, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook or both. It definitely helps out. Even when you see the reels on Instagram, it definitely helps the algorithm and all that stuff push the podcast out there. And I know you guys are doing that because the numbers have been up, and I'm sure they're going to continue to go up now that we are getting closer and closer to the season. So I appreciate all of you guys who have been doing all of that. Let's go ahead and put this link on there. If you guys want to call into the podcast, there is the link for those of you who are watching live on Facebook and YouTube. That is the link right there. Should be available for both viewers on Facebook and on YouTube. All you have to do is click that link right there in the comment section. I'm going to try to pin it on my end if I can. It's not pulling up for whatever reason, but we can do it. Post it one more time. And it'll be on there. I'll pin that post. That way you guys can see it. There we go. Now I see it. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pin that post. So if you guys want to call into the podcast at any point, please feel free to do so. And let's chat it up. We've done the live call-ins only for post-game live streams. But you guys said you guys want to do it for the regular podcast as well. So we're going to go ahead and put that up as well. And hopefully we can start getting some calls for the podcast, not just after the game, but midweek podcast as well. By the way, next week's podcast, you do not want to miss. That is going to be a big one. We are going to break down every position group with the Chiefs. It'll be the last podcast for the month of July. So it'll be a pretty significant one as we try to break down all of the position groups for the Kansas City Chiefs going into the preseason. So a lot of things to get in. All right, my apologies. Had a little bit of a glitch with the live stream. This is a Wi-Fi internet issue on my end. That is actually being taken care of. We had this same issue on Farscast earlier this week, so my apologies. Hopefully that does not happen again during the live stream. Anyway, let's get right into it. A lot of things to get into. Even though we've only had one day of Chiefs practice, a lot went on today that definitely needs to be talked about here on this podcast, starting with free agent signing Kyle Sheets, undrafted rookie from Slippery Rock University. Yes, Slippery Rock University, located in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania. Where else would it be located? So yes, the Chiefs did sign Kyle Sheets, an undrafted free agent. He was originally with the New Orleans Saints. They decided to move on from him on Sunday, and the Chiefs wasted little time taking him as he was available. He ranked top 10 in program history with 154 catches for 2,440 receiving yards and 29 career touchdowns during his time at Slippery Rock University. Finished his college career as a two-time Division II All-American, and his 4 seasons there appeared in 51 games. So obviously a good career there. Yeah, it's Division II, but you never know. If you get a diamond in the rough with a player like this. Some of his top performances, when you look just last year alone against Westchester in early September, had 2 catches for 123 yards. Both of them went for touchdowns. Was more active in the game after that, where he had 12 catches for 210 yards and 3 touchdowns. Had 7 catches for 134 yards and 3 touchdowns against Gannon. So a guy who's had some big games, put up some big numbers in college football last year, hence why he was a D2 All-American last year. So you never know what kind of a player you'll get with some of these players that went to smaller schools, D2 type of schools. We've seen some of those guys succeed in the NFL. It's not common, but it's also something that does happen in the NFL. So hopefully one of those guys pan out during their time. I've seen some speculation. Oh, is this any indication that the Chiefs are expecting a suspension with Rashee Rice? Andy Reid was talking to the media on Tuesday afternoon when he and the rest of the quarterbacks and the rookies arrived, and he said to the media that he has not heard anything on that front. Now, do I believe that? Not really. Roger Goodell did say during the weekend of the draft that the league is going to be patient on this. They're going to let the trial, all of that unfold and take place and conclude before they hand out a suspension. This is a very similar protocol to what the NFL did with the Alvin Kamara situation. So I know a lot of people were, there was an uproar. Oh, it's all on camera. Yeah, we're aware. But this is exactly what they did with the Alvin Kamara thing. Listen, I'm expecting a half a game. I'm expecting a half season suspension, but let me just say this, because the longer this takes, I kind of wonder if it's going to be something shorter than that, maybe 4 or 6 games. I mean, 6 games is still a pretty lengthy suspension. A lot of people are expecting it to be half of a season. But I think the longer this takes to finalize and hand out a suspension, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised when they see that suspension handed out, whether it's going to be this year or it's going to be next year. Here's my thing. I would rather the suspension be this year. Like, I would rather they announce it right now, hand the suspension, have him miss the first 4, 6, 8 games, whatever it is, because then you still have, in my opinion, a good enough roster to go into week 1 and beat Baltimore's defense with Travis Kelce, Hollywood Brown, Xavier Worthy, McCole Hardman coming back, Kadarius Toney, if he can nullify those drops. I think you've got a good pass catching core to go into week 1. With Rashee Rice, if he comes back mid-season from a potential suspension, then it's like, okay, your offense is going to get a big boost, and Rice is going to be pretty fresh off the shelf. So that's just, I mean, not to sugarcoat what he did. What he did was awful, and we even talked about something similar on Farscast earlier this week with what people do on the road, driving and all that stuff, irresponsible driving. There's very small tolerance for that kind of thing. But from a football standpoint, a suspension right now would be better, because then Rice can come in mid-season fresh, give this offense a big boost, because the Chiefs are going to be using Hollywood Brown a lot. They're going to be using Xavier Worthy a lot. Rashee Rice, if he's playing the first few games, essentially the entire season, they're going to be using him a lot too. This is going to be a very active offense this year, in my opinion. This offense last year had a lot of short-lived drives with dropped passes, basically lack of taking care of the football. So to me, I think when you look at the landscape of this offense right now, moving forward, and I know that's been the biggest subject when you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs this offseason, when they're in their quest to three-peat, what needs to be better? The wide receivers, 1,000% needs to be better, because it was a disaster last year. And Patrick Mahomes even acknowledged that in a press conference he did with the media shortly after his arrival in St. Joe, making it very clear that this offense, even though they were champions last year, they're back-to-back champs, and they've got a lot of the same players back, that they do need to play better. Exact quote, "We didn't play our best football." And he's 100% right. This is one of those situations where it's like, if you're Patrick Mahomes, obviously you're the best quarterback in the NFL. The ESPN, they're releasing a list every day, surveyed by executives, scouts, and coaches. Basically, they're asking for the best coach, the best quarterback, the best running back, and they rank them 1 through 10 with a few honorable mentions. Patrick Mahomes was almost unanimously number 1. One person did not vote for Mahomes, and that one person voted for Josh Allen. Oddly enough, the second best quarterback is not Josh Allen. It is Joe Burrow. I know Bills fans cannot fathom that whatsoever, even though Allen is 0-4 against Mahomes and Burrow combined in the playoffs. But and I do agree, Burrow, I think, is the second best quarterback, even though he's dealt with injuries. But again, to kind of piggyback off that comment about Burrow's injuries, think about this. And I heard this mentioned on ESPN Radio on Freddie and Harry's show. Freddie Coleman, who's a friend of the podcast. Harry mentioned that this might be the biggest gap between 1 and 2 that you've ever seen in the NFL. Not that whoever's 2, 3, 4, and 5, which is Burrow, Allen, Jackson, and Stafford. They're all good quarterbacks. And listen, I've had my opinions about Lamar Jackson, but he's winning a lot of games at the end of the day to get you to the playoffs. Maybe the postseason record isn't where it is, but still, you've got some good quarterbacks, great quarterbacks in that list. But as great as Burrow and Allen are, there is a massive gap between the greatest quarterback right now in the NFL, which is Patrick Mahomes, and Joe Burrow. I mean, even with all of the issues last year the Chiefs went through, nobody in their mind said that Patrick Mahomes is not the best quarterback in the NFL. Everyone still believed he's the guy. And listen, that was a rough season last year for the offense, and Mahomes acknowledged that. It's like, what does a quarterback got to do at the end of the day? Because I've always believed Patrick Mahomes is capable of doing what Peyton Manning and Tom Brady did for so many years, even though Manning and Brady went through so much turnover in Foxborough and in Indianapolis for Manning, and then switching over to Denver. Whoever they had to throw to, they always found success with those guys. I always use the example of Julius Thomas in Denver for Peyton Manning. Julius Thomas turned into like an all-pro tight end with Peyton Manning. And then when he left the Broncos and when Manning stayed in Denver, I don't even think people knew much of Julius Thomas. I know he went to two of the Florida teams. I think it was the Jaguars and then the Dolphins. Nobody really knew about Julius Thomas after his departure from Denver. Basically showing the proof that Peyton Manning was able to win with whoever he had to work with. And that's what made him so great. And I think Patrick Mahomes is capable of it. The evidence is already on the table. Look what he did without Tyreek Hill. Everybody outside of Kansas City said that this Chiefs team was going to decline after Tyreek Hill's departure to Miami. And that Travis Kelce was going to be double teamed and triple teamed, and it would be impossible to for the Chiefs to get anything going, which is such a weird comment because people are now saying the same thing about Kelce whenever he retires. Oh, Mahomes is going to struggle without Kelce. There is such thing as replacing people. I mean, yeah, Tyreek's amazing. Travis Kelce is the tight end GOAT, but when they move on, there is such thing as new players coming in and replacing them, and for those guys to be potentially great. But even then, like Mahomes, he put the ball only to where his receivers could get it. And so many times we saw this with Kadarius Toney, kind of what Tyreek Hill did a few years ago, except the difference was Tyreek Hill made up for it with his production. But Kadarius Toney, unfortunately, could never rebound from all of those passes deflecting off of his hands and going into the hands of a defender. Happened in the first game of the season against Detroit, and the last game that Kadarius Toney was a part of, which was in Foxborough against the New England Patriots. What has Kadarius Toney done this offseason? I'm very curious to see that in training camp this year. Sticking on the topic of wide receivers, we saw Xavier Worthy today. Xavier Worthy did practice. I'll get into the injury report in a moment because there are some important names to go over here. Because we did see Nazeeh Johnson practice. Even though he's not a rookie, he did participate in practice today and will with the next couple of days before the veterans arrive. And I think that's very significant. I'll get into that later. But Xavier Worthy did drop a pass on a slant route during drills. But after that, man, he caught everything that was thrown at his direction. He did jam his finger on one of the catches, was taken off the field, was with the trainers, and they took care of him. He came right back out and finished practice. And he mentioned in a press conference meeting with the media today how frustrating it was for him to not participate in OTAs, stating that he never missed a game in college. And by the way, this is someone, if I'm not mistaken, played with a broken hand one season for Texas. And hence why he had some drop issues that year with the Longhorns. The year he had the broken hand. I can't imagine what that's like. So Xavier Worthy is someone that the Chiefs are going to need this year. Patrick Mahomes has said yesterday, there's no easing him in. They're going to use him right away. They need a guy like Xavier Worthy. There's a reason why it's only 3 spots, but the Chiefs traded up 3 spots to get him for a reason. Here's my thing. I know a lot of times when teams trade up in the draft to take someone, a lot of criticism comes back, and a lot of people say, well, there was no reason to trade for him. You could have gotten him at 31. How do you know that? Because I see a lot of people say this, oh, the Bills got the receiver they wanted in the 2nd round when the Chiefs could have stayed put at 31 and gotten Xavier Worthy. How does anyone know this? Because a lot of times what happens is with every pick, calls are being made, trade proposals are happening more than we really realize. And the Chiefs probably got word that somebody wanted Xavier Worthy. I mean, there were a lot of teams out there that wanted him, according to the rumor mill, which, again, take with a grain of salt. But I can never comprehend why teams are down. By the way, I said 31. I apologize. It was 32 where the Chiefs were picking. Shame on me. The Chiefs won the Super Bowl. So it was 4 spots they traded up to get Xavier Worthy. And again, probably because they knew somebody else wanted him. Robert saying in the chat, the 49ers wanted Worthy. Yeah, I mean, given what we're seeing right now with the whole Brandon Ayuk situation and him wanting out of San Francisco, and maybe that's the thing that the 49ers knew well in advance before this week. Yeah, probably makes a lot of sense why they would want a guy like Xavier Worthy for that offense. That would be a great get for Kyle Shanahan and for Brock Purdy to throw to. Absolutely. And I think Worthy would be a great fit for that offense. But no, the Chiefs absolutely jumped up and made that move. Kind of like a couple of years ago when the Chiefs traded up to get McDuffie. I saw the same thing. I saw some Chiefs fans say, oh, why would you trade up to get him? You could have gotten him out where you were. How do you know? No one knows these things. So that's why I'm always very cautious to criticize trades and who teams trade up to get, because you never know what they learned from them when they scouted the player. You never know if they found out somebody else was trying to get that guy. So at the end of the day, this is going to be, I think, a very good offense. Xavier Worthy is going to be a very important part of this Chiefs team. Now, assuming there is no suspension with Rashee Rice to open up the season. In fact, I don't think there will be one this season. I think it's going to come after the Super Bowl when the Chiefs three-peat. I think at the end of the day, Hollywood Brown and Rashee Rice are still going to be your number 1 and 2 starting receivers going into the September 5th opener, which, by the way, is 50 days away. 50 days away. We're 15 days away from the Texans and the Hall of Fame game. Who is playing in the Hall of Fame game? It's the Texans and who else? I want to say the Jaguars. No, no. I have the wrong Bears and Texans. I apologize. So yeah. Oh, I didn't realize that. First look at Caleb Williams. But yeah, that's 15 days away, and the regular season is 50 days away. Scott has a very interesting comment here. Pacheco will have a monster year. Just watch. I agree. And here's the thing, because last year the Chiefs receiving group, not a threat. The worst receiving group in the NFL last year. And now, is it going to be the best receiving group in the NFL? That's, the jury's still out on that. We haven't even played any games, so we don't know that for a fact yet. However, I think a lot of people know that on paper, again, I understand games are not won and lost on paper, but for right now, on July the 17th, that's all we have to go off of. We know what, and no one's denying this. The Chiefs have the fastest receiving group in the NFL at the moment. Oh, and by the way, you have Travis Kelce, who's one of the faster tight ends, and you have Pacheco, who's a fast running back. And I think we've yet to see Pacheco try to showcase and show off that speed that he has, because we haven't seen too much of that. We have seen it, but not on a consistent basis. But to go back to Scott's comment about Isaiah Pacheco, and I've said this in the offseason earlier this year, the Chiefs have a better group of receivers. And I said at the beginning of the podcast, this Chiefs offense is going to be an active offense this year because you're not going to have short-lived drives. You're going to run more plays this year than last year because you're not going to have as many drops as you did last year. That's just not going to be the case. You're going to have drop passes. Every team goes through dropped passes, but it's not going to be as excessive as it was last year. But what's the biggest difference maker going to be this year? I do think it's going to be Isaiah Pacheco because defenses have to respect Kansas City's offense now. You can no longer stack the box with 8 or 9 guys. And not to say Pacheco struggled last year doing that, but it does allow a lot of freedom for that Chiefs offense. Patrick Mahomes, and I don't know what kind of freedom Andy Reid's going to give Patrick Mahomes to change plays at the line of scrimmage, or if there are going to be certain situations where Nagy or Reid will make signals from the sidelines to Mahomes, and then Mahomes gives that to the rest of the offense. But if you have Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice to your left, and Hollywood Brown and Travis Kelce to your right, you're not stacking the box with 8 or 9 guys. There's no way in hell. You have to come out in a nickel or a dime package. And for those who may not be familiar with those terms, basically it means you have more defensive backs and less linebackers and potentially maybe 1 or 2 less defensive linemen or linebackers. Again, kind of depends. Every defense can mix it up and do different things there with that personnel set. So the Chiefs, with what they have in their 13 personnel, that is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. With those 3 wide receivers I mentioned, your tight end, your star tight end in Travis Kelce, and again, going back to the comment, Isaiah Pacheco, because if you have a lot of defensive backs, and if there's a thin line on that defense, Patrick Mahomes just simply needs to audible to a running play, and you just need to let Pacheco cook, because the Chiefs do have a great interior offensive line. Jawaan Taylor, I know they picked on him with the penalties last year, and I've gone over this before, but when you take away the whole penalty situation with Jawaan Taylor was a good blocker. Not the best run blocker in the NFL. Better pass blocker than run blocker, but still a good blocker overall. And if Kingsley Suamataia, which we'll get into shortly, or Wanya Morris, whoever the left tackle is going to be, if the offensive tackle can live up to expectations, Isaiah Pacheco is going to have a really good season, and he's going to have a lot of runs from audible calls this year. There might be some situations where you don't have design runs. So I think if you're the Chiefs, you have to design plays where, okay, you have your 3 receivers, you have your tight end, and then you have Pacheco right next to Mahomes. You have to have some play calls ready, so that way the entire offense knows exactly what's going to be ran, and that way the run blocking, can be where it needs to be when those adjustments are made. Because I think the Chiefs are going to be doing a lot of that this year with Pacheco. And I think another player to keep in mind is Louis Rees-Zammit, who practiced today with the Chiefs. Obviously, he's a rookie, so of course his first ever training camp, and he got in on the action a little bit. I know the Chiefs social media team put out a highlight reel of some of the big plays from today. One of them, Mahomes throwing a touchdown pass to Louis Rees-Zammit, and in fact, you could see on the footage there, Zammit was actually moving in motion before the snap, and Mahomes got the ball to him. Hopefully he's gotten better with his quickness off the snap, because that was something he was really slow about in OTAs. That's definitely something that needs to be better with Rees-Zammit, because this guy is a gifted athlete, and if he does improve on the pre-snap motion and his quickness off the snap, he's going to be a really good player. And I know a lot of people keep talking about him at wide receiver. I think you got to start him at running back, because with LRZ, the route running could be, that's like learning a whole new language, going from rugby to professional football. But we're at the running back position, and not to say running backs don't run routes, they do, but it's a little more simple from the running back position than it is at the wide receiver spot. And I think over time, he can kind of convert and make some adjustments there as his career goes on, because the Chiefs have a lot of expectations with him. Dave Toby even mentioned that they're going to remove Harrison Butker from kickoffs, which I think is a very smart idea. Harrison Butker had a phenomenal season last year, missing just 2 kicks. One of them was a potentially deflated football in Foxborough, of all places. Where else would it be? So when you have either Justin Reed or LRZ as potential kickoff guys, which again, Justin Reed, he's done a little bit of that. So that's definitely a guy that's a worthy candidate. You also have LRZ, who has that rugby background. So he is perfect for the kickoff, both kicking off and kick returning for the 2024 season for the Chiefs. The Chiefs have some good options. And here's the other thing too. I will say this. If you're the Chiefs, or if you're any NFL team, why would you, especially now with the new kickoff format, why would you have a kicker on kickoffs? Because as we know, and no disrespect to Harrison Butker and all of the other kickers out there, kickers are just not physically big like everyone else on the field. Because if a punt returner or a kick returner outruns everyone and has just the kicker or the punter to beat, 99 times out of 100, the return specialist is going to win that battle. But if you have Justin Reed doing kickoffs, if you have LRZ doing kickoffs, well, if those guys are the last line of defense on special teams, well, you like their chances of being able to come away with a tackle to prevent a kick return or a punt, a kickoff return for a touchdown. Obviously, on punt, you would still need Matt Araiza there. So I'm very curious to see what they do with LRZ this year, both on offense and on special teams. And again, I know people are saying, oh, he's never played in the NFL before. Yeah, but this guy's a physically great athlete. I think for those who are doubting him, prepare to be surprised, because this is someone that's going to do a lot of things this year that I don't think a lot of people are ready for. Yeah, I see a lot of you guys interacting with one another. I think so. So please keep that up, whether you're talking to me, you're talking to one another. I love seeing the conversation amongst you guys. If you guys want to call into the podcast, I just commented with the link below. So if you guys have any comments, questions you guys want to call in with, let me know, and we'll put you guys on. There's a link right there for those of you who are watching and listening live on Facebook and on YouTube. You guys can call in. Let me know what you guys want to talk about. I do want to go back to the injury report. I know there are a lot of things to get into here, and I'll get into all of that. I'll make sure we don't forget anything. But Andy Reid did talk about who the Chiefs have that will be on the physically unable to perform list. And that is going to be defensive tackle Derek Nottie, defensive end Charles Omenihu, 2 defensive linemen to start the training camp roster on a PUP. You also have cornerback Jalen Watson, which I think, a little bit of a surprise there. Wasn't really sure what was going to happen. I thought Watson would be ready. And then offensive guard Joe Thuney, who a lot of people consider the best interior offensive lineman in all of football. And obviously, I alluded earlier, mentioning the Chiefs' interior offensive line. You need Joe Thuney this year. He's absolutely a vital part of this offense. Yes, the Chiefs were able to win the Super Bowl without him, but you definitely want to have him than not have him on the field. 100%. This is a very important offensive lineman. And I still remember when the Chiefs got him, I was very excited. And that was the offseason where the Chiefs revamped that entire offensive line after a really poor showing in Super Bowl 55. Of course, so many injuries that took place during the season, and the Chiefs had basically their junior varsity offensive line in that Super Bowl. And we've obviously seen a much different offensive line since then. Continuing to reach AFC title games, now back in Super Bowls, winning Super Bowls with that group of Thuney, Humphrey, and Trey Smith. And who knows if this is going to be the last season for guys like Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. Those are 2 guys who are entering the final years of their contracts, unless the Chiefs do decide to extend them before the regular season gets underway. But the Joe Thuney one is the one that is one to keep an eye on the most. Now, Andy Reid did say towards the end of OTAs that Thuney should be ready to play for the Chiefs in week 1 on September the 5th against the Baltimore Ravens. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on as the preseason games, training camp practices, all of those unfold as we get closer and closer to September the 5th. Now, speaking of offensive linemen, I did mention Kingsley Suamataia. He did a press conference today talking about Trey Smith, what kind of a mentor he has been for him since he was drafted, and that he's been a role model for him all offseason, which is always good to hear because Trey Smith was that guy a couple of years ago trying to figure things out. And Trey Smith was kind of in a weird spot a couple of years ago, as I just mentioned. That was the year where the Chiefs just blew up the entire offensive line and brought out 5 new offensive linemen to start off the 2022 season, or I'm sorry, 2021 season rather. From left to right, I think it was Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, the center was Creed Humphrey, right guard was Trey Smith, and then at right tackle was not drafted in 2021, but was still rookie because he opted out in 2020 because of the pandemic. And that was Lucas Niang, who is still on this team. And I'm very curious to see what he's capable of and what he's going to do this season for the Chiefs. Because we haven't seen a lot of him since his injury in 2021. Because I thought Lucas Niang was playing great at the right tackle spot until that injury. So I'm very curious to see what happens with Niang this year in training camp and in the preseason, and hopefully beyond that. Because I would not want to lose a guy like Lucas Niang. I think it's a very important part of your offense. Is there an option to move him at left tackle if Kingsley and Wanya Morris are both struggling? Maybe. I suppose Donovan Smith, if I'm not mistaken, is still available. That's an option as well the Chiefs have. Kingsley also said, speaking of Wanya Morris, that, they're both competitors, both young guys. And Kingsley said that they'll still be boys, regardless of who wins, which is, a very mature answer from a rookie. And listen, is it possible some of that is PR trained? Yeah, but that's the way things work. And that's exactly the type of answer Kingsley should give. So that's always good. Everyone wants to start, man. I was listening to an interview that Jake Browning, the backup for the Bengals, Jake Browning, John Browning, I can't remember his name. He said that he wants to be a starter. And he feels like he deserves it after what he showcased this past year, and understandably so. No one wants to be a backup in the NFL. Nobody. But everyone understands their role. Do you think Carson Wentz wants to be a backup in the NFL? No. This guy had a phenomenal 2017 season, and he wants to be able to do more of that. 2017 or 2016, I can't remember what year it was. I think it was 2017. So we'll see. Let's see here. I see a couple of comments and questions here. Dan's asking, what are you most concerned about? I am still unclear if Nagy actually knows what he is doing. We went to far too long last year without any adjustments on offense. Yeah, last year, I know Matt Nagy and wide receivers coach Connor Embry, they were the go-to favorites for the finger pointing last year. I think my concern is, like, if Kadarius Toney was the only guy dropping passes, I'd be like, okay, KT's the only guy that doesn't know how to catch a pass. But it was the entire offense. Even a guy like Justin Ross, who, we're kind of waiting to see what he does with the Chiefs. Justin Ross didn't play a whole lot last year, but I remember in the Minnesota Vikings game, he was targeted twice and he dropped both of those passes. It's like, man, everybody was dropping passes last year. And I know a lot of people are going to say, and they did say this, that, the coaches are not on the field. The players are the ones on the field catching. Okay, but why is it not being addressed? And I know it's not being addressed successfully because the drops occurred all the way through the Super Bowl. Listen, I think Nagy is a good offensive coordinator. Listen, this guy was the offensive coordinator. He replaced Doug Peterson when Doug Peterson went on to Philadelphia. And Matt Nagy, for 2 seasons, did very well when Alex Smith was the quarterback. Obviously, he had one game with Patrick Mahomes in that Week 17 game in Denver, which was Mahomes' NFL debut. So Matt Nagy has a good understanding of what to do at that position, I feel like. Last year, of course, his first year as the offensive coordinator of the Chiefs, in his second stint with the Chiefs, not a very good one. Yeah, they won the Super Bowl and all of that, but even Patrick Mahomes said it. The offense needs to be better this year. And I don't think Mahomes is going to call out individuals, but you know damn well that the idea of the Chiefs improving, it involves everybody from Nagy to Embry, Reed, Mahomes, all of the pass catchers. Like everyone has to be better about it. And listen, I know Mahomes did a lot of good things last year, but I don't know what much more Mahomes could have done last year. Because a lot of people mentioned the loss against Detroit in week 1 because Travis Kelce didn't play and neither did Chris Jones. And immediately I saw the narrative. Oh, look at Mahomes. No Tyreek Hill, no Travis Kelce, no Chris Jones. And he lost by 1 point. It wasn't because Mahomes went out there and threw 4 picks against a very good Detroit defense, by the way. No, I mean, he lost that game because his offense could not catch the freaking ball. KT had a ball go off his hands for a pick 6. And even after that pick 6, if KT catches that pass late in the 4th quarter, the Chiefs are in field goal range. And given the season Harrison Butker had, I think odds are in his favor to make that game-winning kick near the end of the game. So, to me, it's like this Chiefs offense here. To me, it's on the table right there. I mean, there's not much that needs to be done. I think a lot of it is mental focus too. That was talked about a lot with Dwayne Bowe when he had his drop issues in Kansas City. But man, if you can just focus and eliminate those drops, Patrick Mahomes probably has another MVP season last year. I mean, the Chiefs probably have the number 1 seed too. And again, I know this is not worth going back to so much last year, but it is important for the sake of this upcoming season because let's say the Chiefs drop issues were not a thing last year. What games do the Chiefs probably win? The Detroit game? Definitely the Philadelphia game. I know Philadelphia had some time on the clock, but man, it's just hard to believe that the Chiefs are going to let them march down the field with a little amount of time left in that Monday Night Football game. The Kadarius Toney offside one, like that was not a drop per se. I mean, so we can just let that one go. I mean, the Chiefs at the very least have a chance for the number 1 seed if those drop issues were nullified last season. And by the way, understand something here too, because I know we talk about how much the offense struggled. And I remember in the week 18 game, which I know not a lot of Chiefs fans saw, especially out of market Chiefs fans, because the game was, it was basically all backups for both sides. So it wasn't a game with any significance for the Chiefs or the Chargers. Only big thing was Chris Jones trying to get his $1.5 or $1.25 million incentive. But Spero Deeds and who is the Adam Archuleta? That's his co-announcer. They were talking about the Chiefs and that game, and they were like, "Wait a minute, the Chiefs have all these struggles, but they have the number 3 seed already locked up." So despite all of the struggles you saw with this team, and again, those things do need to be improved upon this season, they still had the number 3 seed last year. That's the crazy part about the Chiefs season last year, is that they were bad on offense. Okay, bad by what? Bad by their own standard. It's not like they were 32nd in that category in total offense or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, if those drops were nullified, you probably have the Detroit game and the Philadelphia game as wins, and you might have a chance at the number 1 seed. And I think Patrick Mahomes wins MVP last year. Crazy enough, Mahomes had a couple of votes for 3rd and 4th place in the MVP race. So imagine if the drops weren't a thing, weren't as excessive, I should say. Because again, drops happen with every team, just more than some. Obviously, with the Chiefs, they led the NFL in that category. Would you rather watch Joe Buck call every game or watch Jawan Taylor get called offsides every drive? I mean, come on, Dan. This is obvious. Joe Buck. And by the way, like, I like Joe Buck. I've never understood the criticism with Joe Buck. I truly never have. I know Kansas City fans are like, oh, he was rooting for the Giants to beat the Royals because he loved Madison Bumgarner. Well, Madison Bumgarner had an amazing World Series. And by the way, this is very crazy. San Francisco fans actually think he was cheering for the Royals. I don't know what it is with Joe Buck, but Joe Buck has this really weird like criticism around him, where every fan base thinks that he is rooting against their team. And he's actually addressed that a couple of times. He actually spoke at an event earlier this offseason, and he addressed that exact same criticism, which I loved. I laughed. It was great. I think Joe Buck is a great announcer. I don't understand the Joe Buck criticism, honestly. I never have. No one's been able to give me like a valid criticism of Joe Buck ever. That's just my opinion. I'm personally not a fan of Troy Aikman. Honestly, I think he's a really terrible announcer, but I don't know. Layla says, I'd rather listen to Joe Buck than Tony Romo. See, now you guys are going to get me going on this announcing thing. I don't have a problem with Tony Romo either. Do I think he's a little annoying at times? Yes. Do I think Romo stepped in when he shouldn't have in the Super Bowl? Like the touchdown happened, let it happen. Now, me personally, I didn't give a damn because I was kissing and hugging my family when that touchdown happened. So I did not hear a single damn word Tony Romo said after that touchdown. But I remember Charlie Weiss on his radio show on Sirius XM went off on Tony Romo, like lashed out at him. So I didn't even know about any of that stuff until way after. So I don't know, maybe it's a topic for another time, but I personally don't have an issue with Romo or Buck, if I'm being completely honest. Okay, let's go over training camp notes again here. I mentioned those four guys, Nadi, Omenihu, Tooney, and Watson on PUP. The Chiefs did place BJ Thompson on the active NFI non-football injury list, so he is not going to be practicing in the meantime. Obviously, the heart situation that the heart attack he suffered went into cardiac arrest. Harrison Butker, we know the story, went there and got the training staff in there. So BJ Thompson for now is not going to be practicing. So you've got three defensive linemen that are going to be on the show. They're still part of the active 53-man roster. Oh, well, let me take that back. They're active 91 because we don't have a 53-man roster yet. And by the way, I do want to clarify. Kyle Sheets, the wide receiver who the Chiefs signed, I failed to mention this at the beginning of the podcast. He's replacing Isaiah Buggs, who the Chiefs let go of because of multiple charges this offseason that he has faced. Let's see. We talked about Kingsley. Nazeeh Johnson was out there today practicing for the Chiefs, which is interesting because Nazeeh Johnson is not a rookie, but someone who probably needs these 3 extra days of practice. And by the way, I always forget this. I had to look this up because I can't remember what round all the cornerbacks were taken, except for McDuffie. Obviously, McDuffie was a first-round draft pick. But when you go look back at that 2022 draft class the Chiefs had, the Chiefs drafted a lot of defensive backs, 5 defensive backs. Nazeeh Johnson was drafted as a safety, but they converted him to cornerback. Brian Cook was a 2nd-round pick. Josh Williams, a 4th-round pick. Jalen Watson, a 7th-round pick. Nazeeh Johnson, also a 7th-round pick. He was 4 or 5 spots away from being an undrafted player. So, and I think that's interesting because for a guy who almost went undrafted, if you guys remember last year, with Nazeeh Johnson, he got hurt early in training camp, and when Spags was talking to the media, Spags said that Nazeeh Johnson was listed as one of the starters early on on the depth chart in training camp. Think about that. Nazeeh Johnson was early on in training camp, which again, I know does not mean you don't run to the bank with that kind of thing, but still was projected to be a starter at the very least. And you had all-pro Trent McDuffie on the team. And I know Trent McDuffie played a lot of nickel and dime for the Chiefs last year. You also had L'Jarius Sneed, who should have been an all-pro, but wasn't, has now moved on to Tennessee. And just in general, like you look at the cornerbacks who the Chiefs have with Josh Williams and Jalen Watson. I know Watson's not practicing now, but the Chiefs do have a very good cornerback group. I mean, they've got a really good group of guys at that position there to work with. And I know a lot of people are talking about, oh, Sneed moved on. Yeah. And I think the Chiefs are going to experience a little bit of a setback there. Not going to be a major one. But you know what's the big deal? The Chiefs brought back their entire defensive line. Every single person that played defensive line for the Chiefs is back. That is huge. Listen, a good secondary is important in the NFL. Don't get me wrong, but you have to have a strong pass rush. If you do not have a strong pass rush, you do not have a good defense. Plain and simple. That, to me, is the most important part with this Chiefs defense, is having that strong pass rush. Because if you have a strong pass rush, I don't care if you have L'Jarius Sneed or Josh Williams or Najee Johnson there. I think you're going to have a good secondary. And listen, if you have a great pass rush and a great secondary, man, you're going to have a really good defense. Again, with the Chiefs. 2 big losses for the Chiefs last year on defense. One was L'Jarius Sneed. We'll get to that in a moment. The other one was Willie Gay. I think Willie Gay, as great of a run-stopping linebacker he was, I do think that what he did, Leo Chenal can do. Leo Chenal's a hard hitter. This guy went after the quarterback a few times last year, too. So he's also a good pass rusher. I like Leo Chenal and what he did last year. He played a lot more last year. So we got to see more of him. So I think the Willie Gay replacement is going to be just fine. The L'Jarius Sneed one, that's going to be a tall order to replace. But when you have a strong pass rush and when you have Jalen Watson and Josh Williams, your secondary is going to be good. And don't take my word for it. Look at Kay Adams, who is one of the more respected football commentators in the NFL today. On her podcast, she mentioned the AFC Championship game in 2022. Well, technically it was 2023, January of 2023. I know Bengals fans love to defend Joe Burrow and say that he was without 3 offensive linemen, even though that did not have any impact the weekend before against the Bills. Joe Burrow threw 2 interceptions to one to Watson, one to Josh Williams. On neither of those interceptions, which, by the way, both of them were rookies at the time, neither of those interceptions was Joe Burrow facing a pass rush. Jalen Watson adjusted, jumped up, went very high vertically, and made a great play on the ball. The other interception, it was Brian Cook, also a rookie at the time, who batted the pass to his teammate, also a rookie, Josh Williams, who got the other interception. So, and again, that's what Kay Adams mentioned. And I mentioned that many times in the past. So take her word for it, not mine. My point is, I think the cornerback position is going to be okay. I know there are a lot of people out there, especially like Ravens fans, Bengals fans, Bills fans, Texans fans that are, very hopeful that one player from the cornerback spot who's no longer on the team is going to be some big detriment to the Chiefs defense. Those people are in for a massive letdown if they think that's what's going to happen to the Chiefs defense. It is a loss for the Chiefs, but I think that is going to be a situation where the Chiefs defense is going to be okay. Karlaftis is getting better. Mike Dana played real well. And when Charles Omenihu comes back from his torn ACL recovery, dude, Charles Omenihu played really well last year. He had a 6-game suspension last year to start off the season, but in the 11 regular season games he played, he had 7 sacks. 7 sacks in 11 games is pretty damn good. Let's say, hypothetically, you had a shortened season, and every team has 11 games. If you have a pass rusher that can get you 7 sacks, that's good in 11 games. That is pretty damn good. If Charles Omenihu played all 16 or 17 games, he easily has double-digit sacks. And that's huge, going up with Chris Jones and Karlaftis. And by the way, let's not forget about Felix Anudike-Uzomah. Last year's first-round pick. Didn't play a whole lot last year because you had Karlaftis, you had Omenihu, you had Mike Dana, who were all playing well. But FAU got some playing time last year. Whenever he played, he looked good. In that Super Bowl against the 49ers, he had a couple of good stops against Christian McCaffrey, who a lot of people feel like was the best offensive player until he won Offensive Player of the Year last year. Should he won MVP? Probably. I guess it's a toss-up between him and Jackson. But that was the best offensive player in the NFL last year in a lot of people's eyes. So, and you had FAU get a couple of big stops against him. So I would like to see more of FAU this year. I think he can do in that Week 18 game against the Chargers where the Chiefs played their backups, FAU played a lot more and looked good. Again, I know that's not a game you can put a lot of stock into because you had backups all across the board, except for Chris Jones, who played 2.5 quarters in that game, trying to chase his incentive. Yeah, a lot of people are talking about Chris Jones on the chat here. That's my thing, man. Like Chris Jones, who, a phenomenal defensive tackle. The things that he has done up to this point, pretty much on an Aaron Donald level. And I think Chris Jones, is he in his prime yet? I don't really know. I think he's playing his best ball. I know he just surpassed double-digit sacks like the year before. He had 15.5. And he's been playing really well. And I'm excited to see what he can do with everyone on the defensive line back. With all of those guys back, Chris Jones has a chance to have another good season. Is he going to get 20 sacks like he says he will? That's a really lofty goal there. Not saying he can't do it or that he's not capable of it, but it kind of reminds me of Justin Houston and Tamba Hali back in 2013 and how great that duo was with the entire defense. Those two were like competing against each other to be the first one to get to the quarterback for a sack. Whereas, if one did not exist and the other did, one might be able to get 22 sacks or something like that. I think you have a lot of defensive players this year on that front line right there for that Chiefs defense that's going to get a lot of sack tallies this year. I'm excited to see what that group is going to do because a good pass rush will set the tone for a defense. 100%. You have Nick Bolton, who might be the final year of his contract. We don't know. You also have Drew Tranquil, who came back on a very team-friendly 3-year deal and played a phenomenal season for the Chiefs last year, in my opinion. And then you have the secondary, which we've already gone over, and why I think it's going to be pretty good. Do you guys ever think we'll see Derek Thomas numbers again out of our defensive lineup? I don't know. That's very tough. Khalil Mack has come close to breaking his single game sack record. But as far as like Derek Thomas type numbers, I don't know. That's a very tall order. I don't know if we'll ever see that kind of performance again. Chris Jones might be able to surpass the 100 career sack number, especially that he signed a 5-year extension with the Chiefs. So Chris Jones might get there. I know he's playing a completely different position than Derek Thomas did, but at the end of the day, I don't know exactly what's going to happen when you look at historic numbers like that. But Chris Jones has a chance. For sure, he's got a chance. This podcast is brought to you by SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com. Get your tickets for sporting events, concerts, whatever it is you want to attend. SeatGeek has it. If you guys want to catch a Chiefs game, whether you live in the Kansas City area, you want to go to a local college game, K, Missouri, one of those teams, or you want to catch a concert, maybe in your neck of the woods, the baseball playoffs are going on, go to SeatGeek.com. And if you're a first-time customer, use my promo code Farzine. You will get $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek.com using the promo code Farzine. Go to SeatGeek.com, use the promo code Farzine, and get yourself $20 off for your next event. That's $20 off using the promo code Farzine at checkout at SeatGeek.com. All right, before we get out of here, a couple other things to mention here. So I see a couple of people who have asked this in the chat today. I mentioned this at the beginning, but if you tuned in a little late, for those asking, when are the veterans going to show up for training camp? They will arrive Friday afternoon, and then Saturday will be the first practice with everyone, rookies and veterans, for the Chiefs on Saturday. I've had a few people ask, does it vary from team to team? Like, are all the teams different? Yes, actually, it is very different when you look at all of the other teams. For example, the Houston Texans, they actually have their veterans and their rookies, all of them together reported. And so the Texans are the first team to have everybody at camp. Then you have some teams like Arizona. All of their players are arriving on the 23rd. Atlanta, all of their players, rookies and vets, are arriving on the 24th. So, which I'm chuckling because by July the 20th, the Chiefs will have all of their players. The Chiefs will have everyone ready to go and well, I should say ready to go, but they'll have everyone present and practicing for those who can practice, who are not injured, by the 20th. Meanwhile, you have Arizona that's their players won't report until the 22nd. Atlanta players won't report until the 23rd. Dallas players won't report until the 23rd. Indianapolis on the 23rd. Las Vegas players on the 20th. So, only their rookies, by the way, arrive on the 20th. So some teams like Pittsburgh, I mean, by the time the Chiefs have their rookies and veterans, there are going to be a few teams out there that won't even have training camp started yet. The Chiefs are one of the first couple of teams that are starting training camp early. I've never I don't know if there's like a correlation, the team that starts training camp sooner tends to win. Like, I don't know if that's really a thing. Maybe someone out there that has all of these stuff down somewhere on file, on a record, can maybe look that all up. But I don't think there's any correlation to that kind of thing. I'm not sure. Scott's asking how many touchdown passes the Pat throw. I think at least 45, between 45 to 50. I think he'll actually surpass the 50 touchdown mark. I know some people think he'll maybe reach 60 and break the record. I'm not going to put it past him. I don't think it happens because I think the Chiefs are going to be running a lot more this year as well. But I don't think that's impossible to do with this group of players on offense, because I know a lot of people will say, hey, what's the difference? Because the Chiefs have had speed before with Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and Mecole Hardman. Why is this group so different? I think that's a valid question. I think the big difference here is, first of all, Xavier Worthy is on a Tyreek Hill type of level when it comes to speed. I know Kadarius Toney coming out of college did get some comparisons to Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying he is, but he got those comparisons is what I'm saying. Hollywood Brown and Mecole Hardman are both very fast. They can outrun any quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion. So you have a lot more of those today than you did 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when Mahomes first started playing for the Chiefs. So I think in general, that's something that makes it possible for Mahomes to get that record. Beskar, I hope I'm saying your name right. Did you see the video of Pacheco practicing in the field at night using car headlights for lighting? Yes, I saw that. Dude, that's badass. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. And he posted the time on there, or his friend did, that he shared it from midnight. I mean, that's the type of dedication you're getting from a guy like Pacheco. I love it, man. And his backstory and what he's gone through. How do you not root for a guy like Pacheco? I mean, he's awesome. He's awesome. Okay. So we got that out of the way with veterans. They're going to be arriving Friday, and then Saturday will be the first practice with rookies and veterans together for the Chiefs. Okay, I do want to touch on this. Listen, I'm not a big viewer of soccer. No disrespect to the sport. I think it is a great sport. Got a lot of respect for it. The path that a lot of players go through playing for their country and then their club and other organizations they play for. It's a fun sport. I know it can be kind of boring at times because you're not getting a lot of action. And then when you get action, it's so cool. Like everyone's go to the roof whenever you get a goal. But man, I've been paying a lot of attention to Copa America and the Euro League. Dude, there were a lot of phenomenal games this summer to watch. So I had a lot of fun watching those. Copa America, they had one game at Arrowhead. It was Team USA, and I cannot recall who they played against. Shocker, an offsides call is what screwed over Team USA. And Arrowhead, of all places. But neither here nor there. The reason I'm bringing up Copa America is because they had their finals in Miami at Hard Rock Stadium, where the Chiefs won Super Bowl 54, home of the Miami Dolphins. But they delayed that game almost 2 hours because of non-ticketed fans breaking into the stadium, pushing down barricades to get through. Somebody actually had their dog, like a puppy, with them, and they dropped the puppy, and the puppy's like wandering around. I hope that puppy didn't get lost, and I hope reunited with its owner. People were just trampled. Security had no control whatsoever. And then you had people, so you know those spiral ramps that a lot of football and soccer stadiums have? There were people who were there trying to pull up their buddies who, again, did not have any tickets, pulling them up. Now, I did see a headline that they arrested more than 20 people that tried to break into Hard Rock Stadium, which, again, I think is just crazy. Is this something to be concerned about? Because this happened in an NFL stadium, which, by the way, they destroyed the 1972 tribute for the Miami Dolphins. Obviously, the team that went undefeated from start to finish, the only team to do that in NFL history. Man, I mean, that was just disgusting. And, you know, and I'm not like saying there was a connection to this, but it was kind of a weird weekend because somebody came really close to assassinating the former president of the United States, who's looking to get reelected again. And then a day later, you have this weird Copa America situation that happened at Hard Rock Stadium. So it was kind of like a weird weekend in our country with what happened in Pennsylvania at the rally, and then in Miami with the fans breaking in. Now, are these fans the same fans who attend NFL games? Probably not. But are these the same fans who are going to be back in 2026 for the FIFA World Cup games? Absolutely. And guess what? Miami is one of the host cities for the FIFA World Cup. So I can guarantee you the city of Miami and the Hard Rock Stadium security, they're going to be far more better and much more strict. I mean, they're going to have a lot more manpower this time to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And in fact, I think all of the host cities in North America, not just Miami, the entire U.S., Mexico, and Canada, they all need to have strengthened security than what Miami had over the weekend. Because, like, if something like that happens at Arrowhead, first of all, like, all those Columbia fans that tried to break in, like, you destroyed the 1972 shrine for what purpose? So you can watch your team for free score 0 goals? I mean, that was just a disgusting display with fans breaking in and the lack of security there. Sports fans should be much better than that. We always say sports are supposed to bring us together. And then you have maniacs who are trying to go in without a ticket. They didn't pay for a ticket, but they want to break in. I mean, how brave. Obviously, you never want something like that to happen at Arrowhead. Like, I saw the 72 thing, and I'm like, wait, what if they did that to the Chiefs Hall of Honor? That would not be cool at all. I would never want to see something like that at the Chiefs Hall of Honor or anywhere within the Arrowhead grounds. You never want to see that. So hopefully they're going to be much better about that. Not just in Miami or Arrowhead, everywhere for the 2026 World Cup. So hopefully they're going to be much better about that in the future. Listen, we've had some soccer games. We had Messi come to Arrowhead a few weeks ago, and fortunately nothing like that happened there. But man, that was just that was pretty bad. That was a bad look for a lot of people. Those fans, the stadium, the security, all of that. So yeah, Dusty says I'd lose my mind if they broke Lamar or the Hall of Honor. Yeah, the Lamar Hunt statue. Yeah, right there. That's outside of Arrowhead Stadium, so you don't have to have a ticket to see the statue. But yeah, I mean, what if they chose to vandalize that? Like, I would be pissed off 100%. So yeah, I had to bring that up because Arrowhead is going to be one of the host cities for the FIFA World Cup in a couple of years, and you definitely do not want to have anything like that in Kansas City or in any of the other host cities for the 2026 FIFA World Cup. Hey, before I get out of here, I want to give a big thanks to all of you guys. We just surpassed 96 96,000 followers. We're getting closer to 100K, but the 96 is significant because that means we have had more than 10,000 new followers this offseason. It's the second year in a row we've had 10,000 new followers in an offseason. We had 10,000 followers last offseason, and we had 10,000 followers again this offseason. So a big thanks to all of you guys. One last thing, for those of you who are watching live, and maybe for those of you that are watching the archive version on Facebook and YouTube, if you're on YouTube, you already see this, but if you're on Facebook, which is where a majority of my followers are, I just commented with a link to my YouTube channel for this podcast. I'm still going to be doing videos on my Facebook page as well as Instagram, but I'm also going to be doing it more on my YouTube page. We're going to start putting a lot of YouTube videos on there. So if you guys would, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I just commented. In fact, it's also on the scrolling ticker here below. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel for the podcast. We're going to start putting a lot of video content on there very soon. We've already started doing that this week, this month. Going to start doing a lot more of that now that we have training camp underway. Listen, you guys have been super awesome spreading the word about the podcast. Whenever you guys comment and like and share something, all of that really helps with the algorithm. So please keep doing that. I appreciate all of you guys doing that. You guys are a huge reason why we've been able to have such a big following. It just really just shot up over the last few years. So I owe a big thanks to all of you guys. That's why, we do the giveaways. That's me paying you guys back. I know I can't give every single follower a giveaway. I wish I could, but hey, it's still, a way of giving back. That's why I do so many of those. So a big shout out to all of you guys. Again, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. For those of you listening on the audio version, the YouTube channel is youtube.com/@thechiefszone. Or if you're just on YouTube, just search The Chiefs Zone, all one word, and it should be the first one that comes up. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to it, share the link, text it to a friend, let a friend know about that YouTube channel, let them know about this Facebook page as well. Listen, I'm pretty excited. I'm actually, you guys probably can't tell. In fact, my desk is a much bigger mess right now than it usually is, but I have a new table. I actually have an L-shaped table. And I'm going to be doing a lot of things that you guys might not notice on your end. It'll still be probably the same for you guys, but something that's going to help me a lot more when it comes to just space in general and things that I'm going to be able to do. It's something that is going to make the podcast better in the future. I'll be able to do a lot more. So I'm definitely excited with the space I have. I built this studio almost a year ago. Oh, one other thing I completely forgot. I forgot to mention this, but on July the 11th, that is the day of the Chiefs Zone podcast. So the Chiefs Zone podcast is, if I have my math right, the podcast is 17 years old. So the podcast is entering its senior year of high school. That's how old this podcast is. Hard to believe. I was in high school when I started this podcast. That's how long ago I started the podcast. So, hey, big thanks to all of you guys. Once again, if you haven't done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@thechiefszone. Big thanks to all of you guys who tuned in live on Facebook and on YouTube to listen to the Chiefs Zone podcast. For all of you who listen to the archive version on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple, big thanks to all of you guys as well. Red Friday live chat returns this Friday. Join me for that next Wednesday. You do not want to miss next Wednesday's podcast. We're going to break down every single position group for the Chiefs going into the month of August. It'll be our final podcast for the month of July, and that's going to be a big one as we basically break down every single position group for the Kansas City Chiefs. My name is Farzin Vousoughian. Thank you all once again for downloading and listening to this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'm out. Talk to you this Friday for the Red Friday live chat. Take care.